Well, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy a cup of coffee. And today, we're excited to have a really fun conversation. I'm joined by a couple of guests. We've been doing this as part of a business roundtable on a regular basis and sharing that through our industry, through Facebook and through YouTube. And today, we're going to be borrowing part of that conversation and sharing it with you today. I felt it was a valuable conversation that you could get some out of. We're going to be diving into some of the things that are related to our industry. But if you look at it from a broad perspective, it's applicable to any industry. So don't get too caught up in just the training side on our industry, but think about it holistically as well for whatever industry that you're in. There's a lot of cross-reference information there. But we're going to be talking about growing your employees and growing your team members. And that's through hiring and through the training process. And I'm joined by two guests today, Glenn Younger and Rob Reynolds. We're going to be having an interesting conversation with them, getting some feedback through their experiences. And this is part one of that conversation. We're going to share that with you. So grab a cup of coffee and join us for the conversation.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break.
Today is another topical discussion. We're going to be talking about growing your team, growing your employees. And we've got some of the best in the business to chat about it today. And I'm excited to have some conversation with these two gentlemen today surrounding growing your organization through hiring and then developing your team. So let's bring them in. Without further ado, we have on the panel with us Glenn and Rob. Let's go ahead and introduce yourselves. Glenn, give us a quick introduction.
Good morning. I'm Glenn Younger from San Diego, California. I have a locksmith business there. We do primarily commercial work in San Diego, and been in the locksmith industry since 1974.
And you've been around the industry for a long, long time. So as far as you've hired a lot of people, you've developed a lot of different teams, and so that's kind of one of the exciting things about this. And from your own admission, you've said multiple times you've done some things good and some things you've learned from the processes, right?
That is so true. I started out working a small locksmith business, then I worked for larger locksmith businesses. Worked for about 20 some years in the distribution side, so I got this chance to see lots and lots of locksmith businesses around the country. So there was a time where I felt like if it was west of the Mississippi and it was in the locksmith security system integration business, I had probably been to that office. And so I got a chance to be a highly paid tourist and look at lots and lots of locksmith businesses. And you can tell real quickly the feeling that you get when you walk into a business, if it's a learning, growing business or if it's a dying business and they just don't know. And so probably have seen a few thousand locksmith shops in my days. And about 15 years ago, my wife and I decided to do one last run at this. And so we bought a relatively, for our area, relatively large locksmith business. We have about 20 employees. And again, we focus on one specific thing, but the same things held true. I worked for what's now Annixter. Before that was Clark, and we went from about 30 employees to about 600 employees. And so you do a lot of hiring there, and so you get a lot of chances to make mistakes, and God knows I made most of them.
Most definitely, and I'm excited to kind of get into that conversation today. Also with us is Rob Reynolds. Give us a quick little introduction as to who you are.
Sure, appreciate it. Rob Reynolds, I'm Director of Operations for Loc-Doc. Work for the corporate entity for Loc-Doc. My primary role there is the training and development of new franchisees. I also oversee the training for technical training, locksmith, access control, and automotive training. We currently have 1,000 employees in the organization that have grown over time. So we have a nice wide range of folks from brand new, probably just started yesterday, to 25 plus year folks. We've been open since 1991, and we literally have people that started in 1991 still with us. And so it's definitely a challenge to continue to grow at every level. It's easy for the new person, right? Because there's tons to learn, there's tons to teach. but being able to engage everyone across that spectrum is tough. It's good to see Glenn, and so we've got the East Coast and West Coast represented here. So we appreciate the opportunity to come in and see y'all.
Very cool. Well, I think really the main component of the conversation today is growing your employees, and I think you can look at that in two different ways: growing your team by hiring, right? So the hiring process as a whole, and then once they are on your team, what does it look like to actually develop your team and develop your team members and your employees so that they can be the best versions of themselves, which obviously will then correlate out to your customer service and to what's actually happening in the field. So let's start from the very top. Brand new, I'm a business, I'm trying to grow, I need to hire people. What are some kind of tips to that process to say, do I just hire people as soon as they walk in the door? Hey, you sound like you're interested in locksmithing. You sound like you're interested in this. Come on, join the team. What are we looking for as we go through the hiring process?
Sure. This is a huge part of our business, and we've got some little sort of mnemonics that help new franchisees see the pattern. So for a person coming in, we want to be able to recruit the highest quality employee that we can. There are no ready supplies of ready-made locksmiths in the world, at least that I have yet to find. Probably out of the 2,000 or so employees, there's probably less than 20 that were locksmiths prior to coming to work for us. So what we're looking for is the right seed to plant. If we're talking about growing the business, because there is a lot of time, effort, and energy and money spent in growing a locksmith, especially from scratch. One of the challenges that I've seen, at least in my time recently, is less familiarity with tools, less familiarity with safety sort of protocols and process that someone may have gotten through a high school shop class or a high school automotive class. It's not unusual to have someone show up and I'll ask the question that my friend Brad Tyler talked to me. Have you ever changed the oil on your car? And there's a surprising very few people that have ever changed the oil on their own car. The other question, I've kind of backed it down because it almost exceeds the modern culture in a lot of ways. So I'll ask, do you own a socket set? And the number of people who do not own a socket set is very surprising. So, and you don't have to be a mechanic. You don't have to be a locksmith. I don't think this is something that people are born into. So to speak, that you have to be born a locksmith. There's a developmental process that can be applied, but the number one factor is a problem solver, a person who's curious. They like to be presented with unique challenges. Not that everything we do is always unique, and not that it's rocket science that requires a great deal of math and science and that sort of stuff. But when I say problem solving, meaning it's not an assembly line job in a lot of instances where you're just interchangeable parts and interchangeable people. None of our people are interchangeable. Everyone seems to develop and grow and form their niche. And some people are attracted to different sort of problems. Some people are more attracted to automotive problems. Some people are more attracted to electronic problems. Some people are more attracted to commercial problems, and being able to provide the solutions for those. And a big part of that is interview, selection, and screening. So we try to cast a wide net. One example, just quantitatively, that I can think of was in Atlanta, Georgia, several years ago. We had some positions. There's about 100 people applied for one position, and being able to filter through those folks. And there's some nice online tools that are available, various assessments and things. Indeed.com, which is a big, at least a big player in that area, has adopted some online assessments that you can do. For example, mechanical aptitude happens to be one of the assessments that they do, and they seem to be fair, and they seem to be fairly applied to the individuals who are taken. And if you took it, you would say, yes, this indicates someone who is mechanically inclined. So from that sort of pre-hiring and recruiting, it is such a challenge right now with a lot of the conditions that are existing in the world. For example, in Nashville, Tennessee, we have multiple Amazon facilities opening up. So if someone comes in and says, hey, I'm going to go to Amazon and have a very static known quantity of my work life versus, hey, I'm going to go out today and I have to do research on what I'm going to work on today. That seems to be, that doesn't fit everybody's mold. So that's what we're shooting for, is to find someone who's a problem solver, self-motivated, and especially knows how to use their resources to look up information.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Coffee Break Podcast. If this information has been helpful to you, or you just really kind of like our theme song, can you help us out by rating us on whatever app you're using? And if you get really fancy, how about sharing a screenshot on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn? Okay, enough of all this. Let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, most definitely. I think it's very interesting. The last job posting that we had as an organization, it literally started out, it said, we are problem solvers. Like that's number one. We're not locksmiths at this point. We're just problem solvers, and we're looking for people that are excited about solving problems. I like some of those questions about when's the last time you changed your oil. One of our questions in our list is, what did you do the last time your car broke down? And if their answer is, I called somebody to fix it, then they're probably going to do the same thing when they're in the field trying to solve a mechanical problem. So yeah, you don't have to be a mechanic, but it's the knowledge or the curiosity, I guess, that you're looking for from a problem-solving standpoint. Glenn, your perspective, starting at the top, looking for new hires, looking for new team members. What are you looking for when you're trying to hire somebody?
Much like Rob, the challenge is getting people who've got a little bit of mechanical aptitude, but beyond that, the next level is really, apologize for the sirens in the background. I don't think they know I'm here, so I think we're safe. But the more we really feel like once we've got them on board, that oftentimes we can teach them some of the mechanical stuff. Obviously, if they can bring that with them, that problem-solving ability, that's super important. We really look for the things that are hard to change once they're on board: the commitment, responsibility, sort of the positive outlook and purpose-driven desire that they're really trying to do something. If they're somebody who takes responsibility or not, and we're looking for that. And the other side of the interview for us that we really spend a fair amount of time talking about money management issues and sort of their need for approval and their emotional control and sort of general lifestyle challenges and what I'll group as head trash. We're looking for that, like, okay, let's not hire that. And so much like both you mentioned, we want to start with somebody who's got some ability to solve a problem and research a problem and work with their own hands. And then the next step is really those commitment, responsibility, et cetera. Trying to look for a good question that I like that might be shareable is what are the skills you would like to add while you're at this job? We're making an assumption that most people this may not be their last job, or may not be, hopefully it's not their first job, but we ask, what would you like to learn while you're here? And that tells us a lot.
That's very interesting. Just trying to understand kind of what their goals are, what they're looking for out of the employment versus, I think a lot of times, and we've had this conversation in our business meeting .online calls before about hiring, and a lot of times, and I'd be interested to get both of your opinions on this, how often are we as employers trying to make it difficult for people to join our team, or versus being trying to make ourselves an inviting atmosphere for people to come join our team, rather than trying to make it difficult or try to get them to jump through a bunch of hoops to jump in, versus trying to be an appealing or an inviting atmosphere. Glenn, what are your thoughts on that? And then we'll go to Rob.
I think you definitely want to have it so that you want to have them prove themselves a little bit. And so you've got to have a little bit of hoops jumping so that you'll know that they can do that. Mm-hmm. And because that's kind of one of the skills is finding a way, not finding a way to not do something, but finding a way to do something. So I think you have to have a little bit of that. And until just real recently, until 4 months ago, we were all in the recruiting business. We just didn't know it. We had to recruit to get people and get people excited about coming here. And as opposed to having that situation where you'll have one job and hundreds of people applying for it. COVID has given us a unique opportunity that right now there's a lot of really great qualified people out in the workforce. looking for a job that sort of through no fault of their own have been cast aside if they were in the food service business, which is a great service background. There are lots of cooks and chefs who are saying, here's what I do every day, and I'm looking for another job. And so we want to have a few hoops that you have to jump through, but we really feel like we have to recruit. We want them excited about this, like this is the job amongst a group of jobs that they might choose.
Rob, what are your thoughts on that? Do we find ourselves trying to make it complicated for people to come to work with us, or are we trying to make ourselves inviting to be a company to come work for?
I think there's two primary hoops that I can think of. One is the ability to follow instructions and to make it, just very clear and plain. For example, if you ask someone to show up with a copy of their DMV record because they can access that in the state that they're in, and they show up without it, that's usually an early indicator to me that attention to detail, ability to follow instructions, and literally the ability beyond that, even if I didn't say anything, or what should I bring to a job interview? So those sort of hoops I think are good. From a second perspective like that, it's the technology. This thing right here, we work for it, we listen to it, we talk to it. It's 90% of people can function with it, but particularly within our environment, to also be able to be so competent at use of the technology that they're also safer people, that they can ease in and out of situations and the use of the technology so that they're not distracted driving, they're not using their phone, they're confident that they're going to be able to pull over and quickly process that material without it getting lost. But from I think an inviting perspective, for us, it's a big part of that is in the ride along. So before we send someone to any sort of training or anything like that, we're going to just spend some time on both parts to make sure that this is also the right job for them. This is not the right job for everybody. And if they're not going to be happy working here, it's a less structured environment than most people are used to. There's financial responsibilities that many people may not have taken on. So we try to do that ride along and to see if they're going to fit in the culture with us. It's very communicative, sometimes overly communicative, to say, okay, here's what could have happened, and here's potentially what can happen, or here's a potential problem you may run into. And so we communicate like that. And I think for the right person, when they see that this is a caring, nurturing, almost to a fault environment like that, then they embrace it, and they'll just, like a fungus, we just never get rid of them. They stay forever. So, but folks that are not about communication and that sort of stuff, it makes it difficult to force it upon somebody. So that's I'd rather them know up front and not waste their time. Our time, we'd give anybody a shot, but particularly if someone comes and spends 5 days working with us and then leaves, they might have missed some other opportunity.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I think both bring valid points in with that kind of pre-interview process, right? You're giving them some type of a task. I think one of the interesting things, and I would give bonus points to people when we're going through the pre-interview process, if they ask, should I bring anything with me to the interview? That's a big bonus, because that means that they're actually being intentional and looking for ways and asking questions rather than waiting on you to give them direction and specific items to do. They're actually asking in advance to prepare, and that shows more so what they're going to be like when they actually become an employee, right? What do you think of that, Glenn?
I'm right with you there. I think that makes a lot of sense. One of the things a friend of mine in Denver told me once, he said, when people come to the interview, they're going to look as good as they know how to look. And so if they come to the interview in a wrinkled shirt, that's as good as they know how to look. Could they be trained? Yes, but they're going to come. That's as good as you may get, unless you train them specifically on what to look like when you show up at an interview or at a job site. So that was one little key that I took on the interviewing front, is we always think, okay, they're going to look as good as they need to look. And so I have a person in our front shop in our store, And he came in a suit and a tie, didn't know, and said, "This is as good as I know how to look." And I think it scared some people, like, "Oh, he won't fit in." Well, he's fit in just fine. But that's, he knew how to, this is the best I can dress. And so that's how he showed up. So
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. Chad, I would like to ask you a question in terms of the invitingness. I noticed on your website, you have a place for people to apply. Does that work for you?
Yeah, so it's actually, we get a fair amount of applicants on a regular basis without really advertising for it. So it's one of the things that we've done on an outward standpoint, and from a recruitment standpoint, that we're constantly trying to drive awareness, because we've kind of adapted this philosophy that we're always looking for good people. So if they pop up in our system and they're looking for a job, we don't want to close the door for potential opportunities. So we want to always have that open. And we've had some of our best team members walk through the door or put an application online, and we weren't posting for a job. We just always have an open door looking for good quality people to join our team. So it's been really, really fun. So let me ask you guys this, because this is something that I think we're talking through the hiring process, and as we're navigating through this conversation, we've got we're looking for the right people, we're looking for right seeds, but we're going to ask those questions to kind of weed out some of those things. What are some things that you have identified over the years through the hiring process? So I'm trying to position myself as a business owner, somebody that's doing interviews, and I go, okay, I'm getting ready to start hiring people. There is, as you noted, Glenn, there's a large pool of potential employees right now because of the economic situation. There's been a lot of layoffs, and some of the unemployment benefits that have been out there are going to come to a close soon. People are going to be looking for jobs. Just because there's a large pool of potential employees doesn't necessarily mean they're all the ones that you want in your organization. Are they culture fit, all those things? What are the things that you're looking for and trying to keep an eyeball on that are signs that this is not the team member that we want to have on our team? Glenn?
Are they on time? What do they look like? What questions do they ask before they come in? What do they bring with them? Many of the things that you both have said, but that's really it. Are they on time? What do they look like? What's their attitude in coming through the door? That whole first impressions things, it works for us because that's what they're going to be presenting to a customer,
sure,
or a client. And so what's the first impression we get? We're looking at that first impression. And then when we interview, we typically have somebody walk them out to their car just to say, hey, thanks for coming in. Appreciate getting to know you. Let me see, is your, what's your car look like? How do you take care of things around you? And there have been times when I wish I would have been the person walking out their car saying, oh, because however dinged up their car is, I guarantee you that's how their work vehicle is going to look.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that we do. Obviously we don't make that our only judgment, but just looking at how they look, physically how they look, and what image they present when they walk in.
That's a good telltale sign. Rob, what are your thoughts? What are the things that you're looking for that you know that you want to avoid?
Red flag. So red flag for us is really, you get down to logistics, is like a schedule. If someone comes in and they have a very detailed, I'm available from X to Y, but not Z to L to Q, and it seems convoluted, that's going to be tough. In other words, they're going to try to, what they're stating up front is, hey, I'm available, but I'm only available during this time. And we have to be very conscious of that. That's of what our needs are, right? I don't want to hire someone who can only work 9A to 5P if what I need is a 4P to 10 PM primary person. So that is the number. If I had to pick one thing, that would be a big red flag, is that someone that has, and everyone has some sort of logistics and limitations on their time. But in general, if someone basically, to make sure you get to that question during the process, because a lot of times the way that I joke about it, it happens like this. Oh, I'm ready to go. Yep. Oh, I just need the job. Yeah, I'm so happy for the opportunity. Great. We need you to start Tuesday. That's a problem. I can't really make it Tuesday. I've got a video game tournament and then I have to go and see my psychic after that, and then go, well, what about Wednesday? Well, the Wednesdays are really no good for me. And so when you start hearing that, it's, and I'm not talking about childcare or anything like that. there's something very distinctive they just don't want to come out and say, I'm only going to work from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. They want to avoid just saying it directly, so they try to say what they can't do. So
I've never had anybody say that they couldn't start because they had to go visit their psychic. That's pretty awesome. That would be a pleasure.
Just a reminder, you're listening to the Coffee Break Podcast. Also, we wanted to let you know that our team puts together a weekly blog post. You can find it at locdoc.net/blog. It's guaranteed to raise your IQ by 12 points or your money back. So it's pretty much a win-win. All right, back to the conversation.
That'd be a red flag.
So through the process, you're interviewing. All right, so we've kind of talked about that, and then we're getting through the process of selecting a team member, and now we bring them on board, right? So we go, okay, you're going to start. Now, the biggest task that everybody's going to face, and this is a conversation that we have all the time, is training. Rob said it earlier on. There's not a lot of people that are coming into the industry that have a lot of this training and knowledge, and a lot of us are hiring people without the experience. So the next big thing is, how do you have a well-defined practical training program that can get them onboarded through your processes, not only your processes, but the actual technical side as well? Rob, I'll kind of start with you, because I mean, I would imagine with the amount of employees that that you guys are going through, you've got to have a systematic training program. What are the lessons that a small guy, like us, that's just trying to build a team, what are we looking for? What are those things that we need to apply to our organization for a training program?
So I'll tell you, the number one is a curriculum checklist. So it takes time. It is not something you can usually do in one setting. But if you sit down and make a list of all the tasks that you really want that person to be able to perform, even in the first year, and make it as detailed as possible. Let's say that you take care of Our Lady of such and such hospital, and they have 4 different type of sergeant generations of locks, very specifically that you want them to be able to find the keys in the key box. Be able to label and write those things out and issue them to the employee in the form of and I know it sounds antique, but paper, a physical piece of paper to put into a smart book. And I'll show you an example just to.
Rob's going to go get us an example of a workbook that he has. There you go.
This is a product from Smead, super cheap. It's just regular office supply piece. But what it does is it gives you protected pages to put documents in and material, as well as stuff like materials that you may issue, ID cards and things that you can use to help monitor that progress. And what you'll find is that it's going to become an ever-growing document for anybody. I don't care if it's mom and pop and junior. That list, that curriculum will keep getting longer, and make sure that you put it on paper. You don't have to laminate it, because that's a place for them to take notes. It's a place for them to add tasks, for you to add tasks at the same time. So that smart book and the checkoff list is basically a huge piece of it. Intensive training, to put someone in intensive training, Aloha has a 6-day course. They have some additional automotive courses. You have various trade shows and distributors sort of trade shows, and we'll get into that. But for initial entry training is very limited. There's a couple of places in the United States that offer schools. This is more of a tip than anything dogmatic. And I got to say it, if you have a veteran, actually a veteran who has post 9/11 GI Bill benefits, Lockmasters is a fully accredited higher education institution that can accept veterans benefits to get someone into training. So, for example, the 10-day basic locksmith course, when they spend a week in there too, that is an unbelievably effective course. They have done that to military standard. It is task conditions, standards, thoroughly written out. People complain about the price. It is pricey, but for a veteran, It's literally no cost to the veteran that's on post 9/11 benefits. There's Montgomery GI Bill. There's other type of GI Bills. In addition, they get assistance. They get basic quarters assistance or variable housing allowance. I can't remember which one, while they're in there as a basis. Because I think one of the problems that can arise with a mom and pop, and I had a mom and pop for about 4 years before I had Pop-A-Lock, so it was very real to me, is we tend to think, oh, that's just this. Oh, that's just that. To quote one of our founders, it's easy when you know how. And it's hard to empathize with a brand new person. They don't even have a framework to understand what you're talking about. And to you, it's like, oh, well, everybody knows that there's 10 depths and it's 0 to 9, not 1 to 10. That should be obvious. It's not obvious. They have no clue what it is. So that intensive training gives that framework. So come back to your organization, you have something to work with. So of course, if you followed this to the letter of what I'm saying, you would tend to try to hire and find veterans to employ, which I will tell you unashamedly, I think is a great approach to this whole piece. Folks who are, in addition to background checks and security clearances and advanced training or whatever the technical training was, they have demonstrated that basically they can learn, that they can go through and complete a course and go out and do that. And that's a huge benefit in of itself. So that intensive training, and then if you can't afford it, right, it's just expensive sometimes, to at least write out all of those tasks. In our organization, one of the things we do, for example, at my location in Nashville, we'll put up on the wall that list. And so when people come in, they can fill in what they've done, or they can put notes, and it becomes a good, clear visual sign, not just to me and not just to keep a record, but for the other employees, know where that employee stands or that technician stands, right? Hey, this isn't a master locksmith yet, but here's what they do know how to do. And so I think as we divide jobs, as people need help or they request help, or we have to designate who's going to a job, that helps you understand where the person's at. And also, I think it creates a drive to fill that thing up. Right? Somebody doesn't want their board half full for a long time. So they will actively come in and go, hey, can we go find a Lagarde Safe Lock? I hadn't done a Lagarde yet. I did the S&G, but I hadn't done the Lagarde. I got my key, and that's that way they become an active participant in their own training. So smart book.
Glenn, any tips on the training side?
Rob, thanks. The concept of coming up with a task list, we have 15 different task areas that we do. And this was born out of, we literally bought a business that had a locksmith training school. And we looked at it and said, well, their agenda is pretty good. And it was a 8-week, 4-day-a-week kind of a class. And did we want to do that was our question. Ultimately, we decided not to. But what we did was say, okay, based on what we do every day, how well are they covering those topics? And then we went looking at other kinds of training, other kind of locksmith training, and we came up with there are 15 different areas of things we do. And, one of them is rekey locks. And so we need to have a full array of stuff on rekeying locks, and one is servicing safes. And so there's a whole bunch of things that we don't do. We do no automotive. And so there's a lot of things they would have to learn if they did automotive. We don't do that at all. And so that just makes it easier. But coming up with your task list for your customer group or for your business, I think is absolutely brilliant, Rob. And I think that's something that you definitely want to do. Come up with a list of stuff to learn, and then be able to address the way that people learn. And if they're more than 25 years old, which I would suggest is a great age to, it's just more challenging hiring somebody less than 25 years old. It brings with it its own challenges. So we really tried. We looked for
my insurance company, Glenn.
Yep.
Sound like my car insurance company now.
Yeah. No, it's the concept of starting with people over 25. Their brains work differently, and they learn differently. And so typically they will learn by doing, and they're going to make mistakes, and that's what helps them learn. Before you're when you're up to about age 19, you need positive reinforcements, and everybody who has kids understands the benefit of positive reinforcement. That works great until you're about 19 years old. Then you start getting those adult hormones, and those basically tell your brain, hey, you got this, you know enough. You can't keep doubling your knowledge every year or your brain would explode. So you've got this. Go ahead and move forward with what you've got, which is great. What that really is doing is hardwiring you to make mistakes. And you're going to move forward and you're going to try stuff that you're not ready for. You're going to make a mistake, and that opens up your brain. Your brain is kind of on lockdown once you get to about 25 and says, I don't let just any information in. I only let important stuff in. And the way to unlock your brain, the limbic system, is to make a mistake. Emotion also does it. Or then and they don't understand why, but just moving around. So that's why hands-on is so important. So you can talk somebody through, you can give them a book, you can give them a video, you can do a lot of things. But until they're moving their hands, their brain doesn't connect it. So motion, emotion, and failure are the three things that unlock your brain and allow you to learn. And so you've got to set them up in a spot where they're going to have an opportunity to do that. Can they physically do it? That is probably the most important thing in our mind. So we use a three-parter, and it's really demonstrate, imitate, and practice. That's what teachers do, is demonstrate, imitate, and practice. As adults learn differently than children. You've got to demonstrate, they're going to imitate, and then they have to practice because they're not going to get it right the first time. And failure is your friend, because when they fail, if it's an acknowledged failure, their brain opens up and said, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else. And that's something that as you get older and grayer, as I am, you start to appreciate. Those mistakes that you made really helped you learn and move forward. And we learn very little from success. All we learn when we have a lot of success is, hey, I'm pretty good, I'm smart, I know it all. And that's not true. And so failure is a much better teacher as an adult than success, is what I'm suggesting. And so just being aware of that, set people up for learning. Let failure be your friend. Let them fail a little bit, fail little, experiment cheaply so they don't fail big. Fail on that Lagarde lock in your store, in your shop. Don't fail in front of a customer or on a customer safe. Fail easily and cheaply. Experiment cheaply, fail easily, but realize that's one of the steps. So it's one of the process of learning. Everybody who knows anything has had lots of failures to get there.
Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year. And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit Loc-Doc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property.
All right, that was part one of a two-part conversation with Glenn Younger and Rob Reynolds. We're going to be joining them again next week for the second part of this conversation, and I know you'll want to be here for that. Again, if this is your first time listening or watching, I want to invite you to go check out all of the episodes that we have. It's available at locdoc.net/podcast. They're all there in video and audio form. Plus, you can subscribe on whatever platform that you enjoy listening on. But it's all there for you, and we invite you to do that. Over 100 episodes are available for you online, and you can check those out for lots of topics relating to business and development and ideas, strategies, practices that you can implement into your business. It's just another way for us to connect with you and share some of the things that are going on inside of our organization and learning from others in the business world on ways that we can grow and learn together. So we look forward to sharing part two of the conversation with you next week.